here at MemoryFox, and I have the privilege of really using this time to speak with Amber Caron from Wreaths Across America. We're going to be speaking about her experience, how she has really used storytelling and community-generated stories over the years to help build the brand of Wreaths Across America. And then we'll get into a little bit about how Amber has been using our service of MemoryFox to really assist her in that storytelling goal and really Wreaths Across America's storytelling goal. Before we get into the main session, we're going to actually kick it off with Chris. Actually, go to the next slide of our agenda. Yeah, thanks. We're going to start with just introducing MemoryFox, our story, and why we really are passionate about, helping nonprofits of all shapes and sizes, but specifically between myself, Chris, we are both veterans and are super passionate about really assisting these veteran service organizations that we work with to tell their story, to share their impact, because amazing work is going on every day in these organizations. And it's, in our opinion, it's key to help them tell their story. After that, we'll get into the session. We'll talk with Amber. And then at the end, we will show how Amber and Wreaths Across America was really able to utilize MemoryFox. We'll show how MemoryFox really works. And then we'll open it up to Q&A. And so before we jump in, just a little housekeeping. We have Carly who will be monitoring the chat from our team. Please feel free with, as we go through the session, type in questions. Carly's going to be gathering that. And then at the end, we'll have that dedicated time for Q&A. With that being said, let me introduce Chris, our CEO.
Hey, thanks everybody for being here. I apologize in advance if you hear any loud kabooms upstairs. Those were my kids running around. Couldn't get away from that, unfortunately, today. But I want to thank you all for being here. And obviously, I want to thank you most of all for your service to veterans. Obviously, that's very important to me and the team. But the MemoryFox journey actually started a long time ago, and I didn't even know it at the time. So there I was, like a young lieutenant leading one of my first patrols in Iraq. And we came to a small village called Kazalia that had been completely leveled by Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And in the village, there was just like this one old man who refused to leave. And when I asked him why he stayed, he told me this story that I'll never forget. When he was a young kid, there was a French couple that stayed in their little village, and they spent their honeymoon there. And he pointed out the window that was blown out, and he said, and they used to walk up and down the road right there, and they used to dine with us and drink tea. And I was like, and he said, if I leave, that story dies with me. And it's like it never happened. And I was like so moved by that, especially as a young lieutenant just learning about Iraq. And I took that story and I told my commander that story. My commander was moved by that story. And then he told the battalion commander that story. And we were able to convince leadership to prioritize reconstruction for that village based on this story of a French couple from, 50 years ago. And that's the power of storytelling. And, it wasn't even a perfect story. He wasn't a storyteller. He never went to any seminars on how to use fundraising, for storytelling. He's just a regular person, just like the people you guys are telling the stories about. And I'm sure you want to collect the stories about. And that's sort of our North Star, is the idea of that. Next slide. So we actually originally built MemoryFox as a way to interview pre-dementia elderly because I wanted to get the stories from my grandfather and my family. But we did a project with the Naval Park in Buffalo where they wanted to collect stories from veterans for a fundraising campaign. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. How do you do that now? And they were like, we don't. It's the biggest pain in the butt in the world trying to collect video and then trying to be able to leverage that video when it comes to fundraising. And so that's kind of when we realized storytelling is actually the most effective fundraising tool. And they taught us that, and we're forever grateful for that. Next slide. And so we support hundreds of nonprofits, but as a veteran, obviously, I'm very privileged that we get to support so many diverse veteran missions. We have Pat Tillman, Hiring Our Heroes, Code of Support. They all use MemoryFox to collect storytelling content from their community. And at the end of the day, we solve three core problems. Collecting content is a pain in the butt. Keeping that content organized is sometimes an even bigger pain in the butt. And we need a more efficient way and modern way to be able to share our story with our community and with our donors and on social media. Next slide. And so our platform helps nonprofits collect content via our no download collection tool, keep it all organized in a modern content management system, and then design and share that content with your community. And they'll go deeper into detail anyways, but that's enough about our crazy story. Obviously, we're very proud of what we built, and there's a lot of work went into it. So, we really thank you for the opportunity to put this all together, and thank you all for your service to veterans. I'll kick it back to Jack.
Thanks, Chris. And just to continue with that, I think one of the most, the best thing about my job is working with all these organizations, and Amber working with incredible people as well, Amber being one of them. I've had the privilege of working with her over the last year plus now. And just to introduce her, because her story is not only very powerful, but I think she has a lot of experience that can help us, over 15 years experience working with both Wreaths Across America and sort of on her own doing public relations consulting, just from all kinds of different things, taking Wreaths, over these last decade plus to the organization and sort of that brand that we know now, all over the United States. So you see her bio here. I'm not going to get too much into it because I'd love to talk to Amber more about it. So Amber, thank you so much for joining us. And I'd love to kick it off. If you could just tell us a little bit about Wreaths, just so in case somebody hasn't heard about, just what is Wreaths Across America doing, sort of your mission?
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you very much for having me. And I know a lot of the folks here today, so thanks for joining and wanting to listen in. Wreaths Across America it's a year-round mission. I think people probably know us mostly because of our annual National Wreaths Across America Day event that takes place in December. I think a lot of people believe that that's all we do. And I think over the last decade or so, we've really put a lot of work into focusing on that year-round mission that's so much more than just placing the wreath. Our mission is very simple. Remember the fallen, honor those that serve, and teach the next generation the value of freedom. And we do that in part through the sponsorship and placement of wreaths on headstones of our nation's service members across the country. But we do so many other things all year round. Very proud of the work that we've done. And we work with a lot of other organizations, many of whom are here today, and partner with many other organizations, like-minded organizations who are doing good in their community every day. And Wreaths Across America is a tool for a lot of those organizations to raise funds through our wreath sponsorship, sales of wreath sponsorships. They can earn dollars back for their own programs. And that's a very important piece of what we're doing. It's how we answer the question, what do you do for the living? And since 2007, when we were founded as a nonprofit, we've given back over $20 million to other like-minded organizations, many of whom are BSOs, who are doing good in their community every day. So all of our programs kind of go back up to that remember, honor, teach pillar, excuse me. And for a lot of folks, I think it's the experience of participating in Wreaths Across America. And Jack asked me to share this story with everyone. I think it's relevant. And if you've participated in Wreaths Across America, please let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear from folks that have actually been involved. It's a difficult thing to explain to somebody an experience like that, like placing a wreath, because it's just a wreath, right? Or so most people think until they do it. My first experience with Wreaths Across America, I worked for an advertising agency here in Portland, Maine. We had an office in DC, did a lot of B2B work, some nonprofit, not a lot. Wreaths Across America came to us as an organization because they were looking to grow in the DC market. They were a very new organization, and they just wanted people to understand what they were doing and why and how to get involved. So I jumped in because I'm a Mainer. So people thought, no, she's a Mainer. She'll do well with the Maine people, which they were right about. And that first year at Arlington, the year prior in 2007, they had placed just about 24,000 wreaths. So for those of you who've been to Arlington, that's not a lot compared to the vastness of the headstones. And the goal had always been to someday, ensure that all eligible markers would receive a wreath. So that first year that I was involved, we we were able to get up to 90,000. So that was pretty exciting. We had all the national press there. My job is a role of public relations. I think I showed up in high heels and, with my clipboard. And I can tell you that was the last time I went to Arlington in high heels. And I will say that it was a lot going on and it was an exciting day. And I remember our executive director walked up to me, Karen Worcester, and she said, "I know you're very busy and very important." But she took my bag and she handed me a wreath and she said, "You need to take some time and you need to go place this wreath. You need to find a headstone. And I want you to take the time to read their name, say it out loud, and experience why we're here today and why it matters." And I will tell you that that was a turning point for me. And that was in 2008. And never look back, because it truly is a very meaningful experience, especially as I've over the years gotten to know Gold Star families and veterans, and recognize the impact that something as simple as a wreath can make for these families. So, and we've evolved in many ways. So flash forward to 2022, and Wreaths Across America placed just over 2.7 million wreaths, all sponsored by individuals and people who care, at over 3,700 participating locations across the country, including every headstone at Arlington. We were in Guam, we were in Puerto Rico, Alaska, Hawaii, and I've had the privilege of placing our wreaths that were sponsored in Normandy and Luxembourg. And it continues to grow because it makes an impact, and it's more than a wreath for a lot of people. And it's a catalyst to bring communities together. So
Yeah.
Wreaths Across America.
And that's quite an amazing story. Thanks, Amber. I think most of the organizations that are on with us today can identify that core sort of question is, yeah, if you just look at it on its face, it's just a wreath, or it's
Sure.
just a scholarship, or it's just a work program for a transitioning veteran. But really, to the veterans, to the community, it's so much more. And the challenge of how do you display that impact? How do you display that? And so if we can move on to the next slide, I want to really get into, going from 20,000 wreaths now to over 2 million, right? That obviously has taken some doing, and it doesn't happen by just sitting back and hoping, I hope people are going to participate. From a storytelling and a marketing standpoint, there's all kinds of different things. We've talked about this. I've talked about this with all of our marketing teams that we work with. You have to show the impact. There's different channels that you have to think about. Do you share on social media? Who are you sharing it with? How do you get the money to collect the stories? And do you need to do an interview? And does it need to be in person? And how do you make it look super polished? There's all these different things. What would be, from the past, I would say, decade, as you're growing Wreaths, what have been sort of the most important things you focused on? And what has been the thing that has helped really grow the brand of Wreaths Across America?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because, I think we can always come back to two things for us. We've done a lot of work, and to be clear, I think people think because Wreaths Across America might be so well known that we have this huge team. We do not have a big team. I want to be very clear. We do a lot with not a lot of people. We are still an organization of less than 50 employees nationwide. So the communications team really wears a lot of hats, myself included, and we are all learning every day. So, we're not afraid to learn new things and evolve. But the thing that has been constant, I think, for this organization has been that we are very authentic in our voice, and that is part of our brand values. So the everyday person can relate to our content. We do have some produced materials, obviously for, bigger things that we need to get done. We do some production, but for the most part, what people are seeing is actual participation, right? It's actual individuals who are taking an action and being part of our mission. And by showing that to people, it's something that's very relatable to our audience. And we have many audiences. I mean, We have a lot of different target audiences. I mean, we have a whole audience that's specific to trucking. You know, trucking is a huge part of what we do. How do you think those wreaths get everywhere? So, you know, trying to really speak to those individual audiences with people that they can relate to and actually trust, right? And I think when you talk about authenticity, trust is that it's the core. People have to really believe what they're watching. And I think that kind of pivots to the other core piece for us. You know, Wreaths Across America decided as a group, you know, about 6 years ago, that we really had to focus more of our energy on our hyper local. So when I talk about hyper local, I mean the actual communities where our supporters, where our donors, where our volunteers live and work. And if we can utilize those ambassadors in those communities to get more people in their community involved, you kind of get this groundswell, right? And we pivoted a lot of our communication strategy to that hyper-local aspect. You know, we still obviously do national. We're a national organization. We have to do some national, but even when you talk about media relations, you know, we see at this point more value in going towards community newspapers and you know, local TV affiliates than going to national media, because your local supporters trust their local media more so than national media, as we all can attest to. And, you know, given the current state of our country, people want to feel that what they're hearing is actual truth. And so by working through that hyper local and using that authentic voice and sharing from people who have actually, you know, that the mission's making an impact, that's how you're going to get more people in that groundswell. And I think that those have been those two kind of constants. So that we've really focused most of what we do across all channels. And speaking of channels, I mean, you know, the other piece of this is that several years ago, I don't know about some of you all, but as a media relations person, it became very evident about, I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago, that it's really hard to get your good stories on the national media. I don't care who you are. I mean, unless you're paying for some advertising, it's tough. It's kind of you have to really have a special story. And then even then it might be who you know. And if you have a good relationship, it's tough. So one of the things that we also did was we recognized that we have our own channels. So we don't necessarily need the media to be our mouthpiece. Why can't we be our own mouthpiece? And so we've really put a lot of energy into that. And our team has put a lot of energy into that over the last several years. We've developed our newsletters and really working on list segmentation and reaching new audiences. We added a radio station, internet radio station, so that we can actually just be our own media and share all of our stories and the stories of our partners, because why not? I mean, we are a voice for America's veterans, and we're on internet radio, and we're sharing, you know, constant coverage of our partners and what they're doing to highlight their work and our work, you know, online through social media, and through our own blog. You know, these are all content channels that are owned by us. So it's almost by creating content that's authentic, that can then be used across all those channels, we're not reliant necessarily on whether or not the national media or any media is going to cover us, right? We're creating that for ourselves. So, you know, we use those tools to do all these things. We share program awareness, we share, you know, brand specific things, we share impact stories, and a lot of that is just collected from our supporters, and we have different mechanisms for doing that, but MemoryFox is a big one, certainly.
And I think that's, you know, when speaking authenticity, especially, you know, from a veteran standpoint, and I'm speaking from my own experience and maybe a little tongue in cheek, I think the veteran community specifically can be a little skeptical at sometimes about different people selling to them, and, you know, just about seeing things that are overly produced. But seeing like-minded individuals or that impact, I think, goes a long way. And if we can go to the next slide really quick, Josh, I think you covered most of what I wanted to talk about. But, you know, I work with a lot of organizations where they struggle of where can I collect these stories from, right? Yeah, we have impact. We're doing this mission, but do I have to come up with these, amazing marketing plans and these campaigns? I think, your example of the truckers is such a great example because they're a part of your story. And I would imagine they probably aren't used to being asked for their story or being told a story. And so how do you recommend, organizations sort of view their storytelling goals, or how do they even create it? Do they come up with these crazy marketing plans and have to find these, the perfect story, or what is it more programmatic or working throughout, the rest of your organization, what you're already doing?
I mean, I am not going to knock anyone who wants to put together a strategic plan. That's not necessarily my way of managing things, just because we have so many moving parts at all times. And so, they're all all of our things kind of blend into each other. So, I mean, I think, there's a few ways you could do this. So, I think that it's always important to have a goal, and we really try to, everything that we do, every tactic, because, we're talking about tactics here, guys, like this is collecting stories and distributing stories. Those are tactics. And tactics are important, and you have to have good tactics to be able to be successful. But in order to define what that success looks like, you have got to have a goal. So going into any project, what's the goal here? What do we want to do? And then what tools and tactics do we have available to us that we can utilize, right? That can help us reach that goal. So, for us as an organization, there's always an underlying goal of, reaching current supporters, right? And making sure that we're giving relevant content that they like, that they want to see, engaging with them. And then also there's always this need to reach new audiences. And as any nonprofit, if you're not reaching new people, you're not growing. So finding ways to maybe identify, different storylines that could help with that, like reaching new people. But I will tell you, utilizing a tool like MemoryFox for me and for our organization has been helpful in that you don't necessarily know what those storylines are until you ask, right? I would love to tell you that I know every story of every person that I have engaged with at Wreaths Across America over the last 15 years, but I don't. I know some amazing stories that have been personally told to me, like Chris's experience. I have been moved to tears in more random locations, and because people are just want to share tell you something that experience that happened. But until you ask the question, they might not tell you. So by having a way for us to ask the question, and then have them respond, you might find a storyline that you don't even know you had to share with other audiences, right? So I think that's important. But looking at that goal and really saying, okay, for instance, like we just kicked off a new MemoryFox campaign for Flag Day. Wreaths Across America waves the flag every Tuesday morning from 9 to 10. We took it over from the Freeport Flag Ladies, and we want to see people across the country waving the flag with us. And the goal is just to grow that community. That's it. We're not asking anyone to do anything aside from finding a flag and going and waving it. And we want to create a mechanism so that they can easily submit those stories and tell us why, so that we can grow that community. And that's the goal, to grow that community and maybe create a groundswell of patriotism around our flag. But, it might sound simple, but you have to ask people, right? And then give them an opportunity to submit that. And then we might produce something based on what we get. I mean, we might make it look a little bit more polished. Maybe not. Depends on what we receive. I mean, you don't really know until you try it.
And I think that's an amazing way to look at it too, of you have that goal of expanding the community and sharing more and trying to get more people to participate. What better way than to show others within the community doing so? And so, it's playing on that. People want to be included. They want to be a part of the mission. They want to help, obviously if they share those values and they share, and they're passionate about your mission, they're going to be wanting to share, in that experience. And And to be able to capture that, that's probably the most powerful tool you have versus writing, a write-up or an essay or an article to show somebody actually waving a flag or a family or,
Right.
loved ones together. That's it, right? That's the power that you're looking for. Well, that's a great transition into speaking of, you already brought it up before, but Wreaths Day from last year. Wreaths Day, obviously one of your biggest programs. And so put it in your context and sort of your framework. What was Wreaths Day 1? I think you've already explained it, so maybe we don't have to get too much into it, but what was your goal when from your standpoint, you have Wreaths Day 2022. What was your goal in terms of story collection or storytelling, going into it? What did you want to accomplish with Wreaths Day 2022?
Well, I can tell you we had a challenge for the last few years. After Wreath Day, I get inundated with, I'm talking a lot of emails of people wanting to share their participation, which is awesome. It can be a little overwhelming and you don't really know what to do with all of those things coming into your inbox. And so we utilize MemoryFox to basically provide a mechanism for people to submit those stories from all over the country. And we learned a lot because we really didn't promote it that heavily. And as a result of last year, we've learned that what we can do to make it even more utilized this year. And I think it'll be even easier for people to be able to participate in it this coming year. But what happens is that I don't know if any of you, obviously I'm a little bit aware because I'm paying attention to everything that's being said about us on Wreaths Across America Day, but literally people it trends, it gets, people are sharing their photos everywhere. And some of these photos and some of these stories are so incredible that you just want to how do you bottle it all up, right? And this was our way to do that. So we got so much great content. And the thing about Wreath Day that I have to just say this to everybody, if you have not participated, one of the best things about it is standing in line, waiting for a wreath and talking to your neighbor. It's literally, that's the definition of community. It's an opportunity to hear somebody's story and to strike up a conversation. And we have learned so many amazing stories that we've been able to share through people out of happenstance, met somebody at Wreath Day, right? Or met somebody who served together, or, there's so many things that come from that, from just people being able to talk about it. And so this is kind of that same community, but just capturing it in a way that no matter where you are, you can submit it. And we love to see, it's not just Arlington. Obviously, Arlington is well known, but literally there are cemeteries with 2 headstones in it that are getting wreaths placed by people. And there are cemeteries that are way larger than Arlington that have hundreds of thousands of graves and tens of thousands of volunteers at them. So it's the full spectrum. So we received a lot of content this year, and luckily it did not come to my inbox, which was even better for me. So yeah. It was very exciting.
and I love that point too, because I think with a lot of teams, a lot of nonprofits, it's how do you collect that content, right? Because you tend to focus on maybe one area, this is going to be a good story, Arlington. So we're going to send our people there, it's going to cost some money, but we're going to have people interviewing, we're going to have people taking photo, but then you might be losing those smaller stories or those more authentic stories. And so I think what you did with providing the capability for your community to share on their own, using MemoryFox and using our help, I think was super powerful because like you said, now it's not in your inbox, it's organized, it's cataloged. Now, how can you use that, right? How are you going to take, all of that content, right? Those stories, and then what's the plan next? Like, what would you do with that storytelling?
Sure. So a couple things. So just one, if everyone doesn't know this, so Wreaths Across America actually uses Canva we use it for our social media graphics. MemoryFox actually has a Canva I don't know, we call it like application
integration. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So we had, literally thousands. It was, what was it? Over 6,000 pieces of content that came through that all automatically got pushed into our Canva account with the click of a button. And for our social media team, they were very grateful that they didn't have to download and sort. So basically everything got pushed into the Canva account. So now the social media team can utilize that content real time as they're going through, and looking at their content calendars. We can utilize it on our newsletter. I mean, it's easily, those stories we've been able to follow up with some folks and do larger stories on Wreaths Across America radio. We try any piece of content that we have, we try to use it in multiple places just because it's efficient to do that. And you're reaching people where they are, right? Not everyone's sitting on Facebook. Not everyone's, you got to hit people from different angles. So, and some of the stuff that came through, to your point, Jack, our team is small. We cannot fly people. I mean, my goal is to go to as many cemeteries as I possibly could to participate, but I always end up at Arlington because of my role. And that's where our leadership team ends up. So as a result, I feel like we do miss some of those, opportunities to capture what's happening in other places. And through this, some of the stuff that came through was downright, like just gorgeous, beautiful content, just very moving. And we learned a lot. I think we can get even more engagement this year because we didn't really promote it that hard last year. Because it was we weren't sure what we were going to get. So we didn't want to go too crazy, but knowing now what we know, we're going to kind of push it a lot harder this year. And we're going to use it in other ways too, because I think, people realize how easy it is. And that is something to note too. Our demographic is not necessarily tech savvy. And as a nonprofit, if that's your audience, that's something to keep in mind too, because I think about my parents trying to do anything with a smartphone ever, and it's not always great. So the tools available through MemoryFox are it's very easy. I mean, even I can do it, and I'm pretty sure my mother could. And so that's important too, thinking about who your audience is and their ability to utilize something like this.
And that's awesome. And that's, when I think of this question, right? If one of our passions of storytelling and showing your mission, if somebody asks you that, what is your mission, right? We just showed all those stats on the previous slide, right? You were describing what Wreaths Day is, but until you see, the dedication, sort of the power and the gravity of visiting, a grave and laying that wreath, you really don't understand the mission until you see that. And I think you've done an amazing job, you and your team, of showing that story and growing that story so that you can continue to, because at the end of the day, the whole goal is to grow so that you can provide more support to your community, to lay even more wreaths and support those Gold Star families in a way that you couldn't before. That's the mission. And so to utilize storytelling like you did, I think it has been such a powerful example that I've seen. So I think that sort of wraps up with speaking about Wreaths Day. Thank you so much. I do want to ask you one last question. We want to go to our next slide. You've obviously done an incredible job at Wreaths of growing the participation and the ability for people to share. And I know a lot of organizations aren't there yet, right? That they don't have, thousands of people sending them emails every day, or not every day, but for their programs trying to share that. They're trying to grow that brand, right? They're trying to grow the participation. And so what would be one, maybe two things, sort of final words for those organizations that are trying to grow that success and that brand to where people are wanting to share?
Sure. Well, first, I've been involved with Wreaths Across America for 15 years. It was not always like this. We have grown. We have grown steadily year by year, and it was the challenges that we had 15 years ago are different challenges now. And that's, as your support system changes, we really, for a large part, have been very much a grassroots organization because it's people's participation that helps it grow, right? And I think when you talk about storytelling, that's where you can think about that participation aspect, right? It's a way for people to participate when maybe they're not actually physically able to be there, right? And I think, the pandemic really brought some of this to the forefront, where people can share their experiences and relate to people without having to actually physically be there. And I think that, you know, being able to convey the impact of your mission through an authentic story of someone or someone's who have had a positive experience. And I highly encourage you to stay focused on the positive. You know, it's the, I think I said when I talked to you last, Jack, the Sarah McLachlan effect, right? So every time, you know, we don't need to focus on the challenges. Like the storytelling is the opportunity to show the positive, right, of participating with your organization and what are the good things that can come and the impacts. And yes, some of those things are tearful and some of those things are just so moving, but if you can stay focused on the emotion of why people would want to be involved, you know, and you can do that through telling people stories. I mean, that's literally exactly what we're doing as an organization. We are in the business of telling people stories. And by telling those stories, we help teach the next generation, we honor people's service, and we remember folks. And that just stays true to our mission. So I think if you can think about it from that perspective and find a way for people to participate without maybe having to be there yet, it's a great way to do it.
Well, that's awesome. And thank you so much for sharing your experience, you know, how you've grown and help Wreaths grow and how you were able to collect all those different stories during Wreaths Day and sort of your plans with that. And so thank you so much. We're going to transition now to show a little bit of the nuts and bolts of how Amber and her team was able to utilize MemoryFox and how anybody can utilize MemoryFox to collect powerful stories. So Josh, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Sure. Yeah. And Amber, again, thank you so much for joining us today and participating. I know we got to see a lot of your amazing content kind of come through in real time as we were working together on that, but even just to see it again in the presentation, it's so powerful. So, and again, thanks for everybody who joined us today in the audience. I've seen all the participation in the chat, so I appreciate that. So I'll dig in on this a little bit. I know Chris shared this slide earlier, but my thought is we'll just talk kind of high level on the collect, organize, and share process of MemoryFox and how it works together. And then we can kind of dig in on each of these. And we'll actually let you run through kind of an interactive storyteller journey if you actually want to pull out your phone here in a moment, participate. But at a high level, the way it's going to work, just like Amber mentioned, you're going to be able to build these branded, guided story collection campaigns. Everything is designed to be barrier-free. So whether you are sharing that campaign with volunteers throughout multiple programs, whether you're sharing it to your donors to understand what motivated them to support your mission, or any community you want to collect from, nobody has to download an app. Nobody has to set up an account anywhere. The last thing we want to do is give your community any additional work. And then everything that you capture, whether it's video submissions, pictures, text-only responses, everything is going to funnel really nicely into this private story bank for you and your team to access. Everything is also going to be categorized at the point of capture. So just like Amber mentioned, they had this very successful Wreaths campaign. They're going to be running this Flag Day campaign very soon. So if you're running multiple campaigns throughout the year or concurrently, all of that content as it's collected is going to be categorized for you and your team to kind of sift through and be able to utilize right away. And then the final piece, this kind of goes to the share side. And this is where we're always listening to our community and our customers and trying to give you the best resources and tools to design that content and make it public facing. So, again, Amber mentioned that Canva integration, which we're super excited about. So you'll be able to access all of these individual stories in Canva. Additionally, we have our own landing page builder that you can access. And of course, you'll always be able to download the original high quality version of any pictures, any videos that your community decides to share with you. So what I thought we could do is actually run through this campaign that Amber and her team put together. So this is actually, we duplicated this. This is going to run into our demo account, but if anybody wants to follow along on your phone just to kind of get an idea of what that storyteller experience would be like for somebody from your community, I would invite you to do that. So you can scan that QR code, or if you do want to put that URL right into your phone, that'll take you in. Otherwise, we can kind of go through the screenshots together. But the way it's going to work, the very first thing your storytellers are going to see is whatever personal greeting or description you want to provide for them. You're also going to have the opportunity to have a form element. So if it's important for you to request or require contact info, demographic info, geographic info, whatever information is important, this is your opportunity to do it. But conversely, if you think that that might be a barrier for participation, you can bypass this piece entirely. So there's a lot of flexibility on how you can shape that journey for your storyteller. Once they get through that form element, if you have it, you are also going to have the opportunity to capture all of that consent and their permissions right up front. I'm sure, and maybe throw in the chat if you've ever experienced this, but I know I've talked to folks who have, finally gotten a really compelling story from someone from their community, and they have to chase down and get their permission and their consent after the fact, which not the funnest process, and especially if you're dealing with something time sensitive, it's just a challenge we hopefully can prevent. And the other cool thing here is you can customize whatever consent language you need and use it based on the campaign that you're running. So once your storytellers get through those housekeeping steps, this is where they're going to see your actual content request. So in the example with this Wreaths Day campaign that Amber was talking you through, the way they did it was three requests. Very simple. Can you give us a quick military memory? Can you share your experience with us, or could you give us, just tell us, why you chose to participate? What's nice here is when you build this campaign, it's totally up to you. We have plenty of customers and nonprofits we work with that might send out, one link, one call to action. We have others who may send out 3 or 4. So it really gives you a lot of flexibility. Once your storytellers select that content request, it is going to nudge them to do a video submission. So it very intentionally is going to default to video. But as you can see across the bottom here, you can always give those storytellers the option to respond with photo, text. They can always upload existing media, multiple images, multiple videos, whether they're doing this from their phone, desktop, laptop, whatever device they happen to be working from. There's also some quality control piece. You're going to have the ability to maybe give them some additional instructions as they're taking the video or as they're making their submission. Once they send it through, we do always ask them for an optional caption. And this is just one more opportunity for you to capture some context, some narrative from that storyteller, and you'll have all that at your fingertips as that content arrives in your story bank. Once they're done here, they'll get a nice thank you notification. And from here, they have the option, they can continue and go back in and respond and maybe make other submissions. But we do always want to, at a minimum, try to close the loop and send them back to your website. So you will have a custom call to action here. For many of our nonprofits, this goes back to a secure donation page or a resource page or a home page. So the idea is now that they've gone through this journey, we want to close that journey out by bringing them back to your website. So that's a pretty standard storyteller journey. And I know we're a little bit over, but I can, if you folks would love to hang out for a bit, we'll just kind of continue and push through here. And we will be recording this and sharing the recording with everybody who registered as well. But in terms of the story bank and where all that content lives, a couple of great things are going to happen. So all of those assets, everything comes to this one central location. It's categorized at the point of capture. And it's all there for you and your team to access. And what's nice is, you can also migrate over any existing content, videos, pictures you have if you want to house everything in this one kind of central content library. We also, every nonprofit we work with, everybody gets unlimited team seats. Another benefit here is if maybe you have your marketing team is kind of the nucleus, they're running the show, they're collecting all these assets. It's very easy if you want to give seats to your fundraising team or your program team or your grants team, and they can kind of have access to these powerful anecdotes as well. And then in terms of the share piece, right? So what you're seeing play through, this is an example of the types of stories and share. We call them community stories that you can build using our landing page builder. These can be shared directly, or we do provide all the code for you to embed this directly onto your website. And then, of course, we already talked a little bit about Canva. And Amber, thank you for talking through exactly how nice that works. And just like you're seeing here, all the videos, all the pictures, everything you capture in real time is now going to populate right in Canva. It's going to be categorized the same way it shows up in MemoryFox. So if you think about maybe you have a campaign specifically for volunteers, another one for program stories, another one for donor stories, it's all categorized the same way from within Canva automatically, which I have no idea how the developers made that work, but it's amazing. So to kind of close out the brief demonstration piece, just in terms of why nonprofits are using this and having success with making this part of their storytelling toolkit, it's really that those better stories are going to equal better outcomes for your organization. So we talk a lot today about, Wreaths Day, a very specific use case. And I think when you're looking at this, most of you probably see one of these that sticks out immediately. For most of the folks I chat with, it's demonstrating your impact. It's good stewardship, which I think we all agree, hugely important, right? It's probably the main reason most people start to use MemoryFox. But once you've had success, it's very easy to start doing use cases that maybe are more on the advocacy side, or maybe more internal culture building, with elevating and highlighting the success of your colleagues or your volunteers. So lots of cool stuff that can be done. And I guess that's pretty much all I had prepared to show you on the product piece. We would have, anybody that's on the call who's interested in carving out some time for a one-to-one with me, I'd love to connect, learn a little bit more about your organization, the communities that you support, your storytelling goals, and see what we could do to support you and empower you to have similar success to Amber and the Wreaths team. Because we work with nonprofits, we do equitable pricing. So everything is going to be determined by your most recent 990. And everybody gets the same level of service. So you'll have unlimited storage, unlimited campaigns. You'll have dedicated access to Jack and the rest of the customer success team. So I'll just leave this up here as we go through any questions, but feel free to scan that QR code. That'll give you a chance to do an interactive product demo or meet with me directly. I would love to keep this conversation going because I think Amber made a ton of amazing good points. So yeah, I'll leave this up here and I'll mute myself for any questions that we have now.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate the demo and the walkthrough. And just from my side and the customer success, I know sometimes for different teams, this can be a little overwhelming maybe to think through, like, how would you incorporate this? But we are here to support. And so from the customer success side, we are here to ensure your success. So anything that we can do, any of our customers, like Joshua mentioned, has access to our team to help, brainstorm ideas, to create these campaigns, to build collateral once you've collected it. And so we are here to support. We love supporting our nonprofit partners and our customers. And so we're always passionate about sharing that story. So with that being said, that concludes the talking portion of today's webinar. We have gone a little bit over, but if you have any specific questions, whether that's for the MemoryFox team, for Amber, we're going to stick around. Feel free to drop it in the chat and then we can bring it up and highlight it. If not, thank you so much for everybody for attending. Thank you so much, Amber, for taking the time to share with us today. It's always a pleasure to talk with you and to hear your story and to really, thanks for taking the time to help others think through how they could use storytelling to grow their brand and their mission. But that's it. I'm going to stop talking. Anybody have any questions? Feel free to drop it in the chat and we'll stick around. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
I want to give a special shout out to the customers of MemoryFox that are here. I see we got Vincent from Tunnels Tower. Who else? We got Claire from Women's Military Memorial.
Hi, Claire.
Greg from the Neopat, Ohio. I'm sort of going through. Sorry if I missed you as I go through. That was just a couple I saw on the chat. So, and if any of you all want to schedule time to talk with me, reach out. We're always here. But yeah, it looks like we might not have too many questions. If you have anything, any other questions, feel free to reach out to Joshua. Feel free to reach out to myself. We're here to support. And thank you so much for everybody attending. I think we're going to wrap it up. Seems like there's no questions. So thank you so much for attending and have a great rest of your day and week.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Amber.